What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will have a follow-up video to another video I recently made about why you should never do a touch and go bench press. So today we will explain what you should do then. So what we'll talk about today is how to learn to do a good soft touch pause on the bench press. Now there does also exist something called a sinking pause bench press, which is very different, and we're not going to talk about that because I think everybody should know how to do a soft touch bench press. So if you don't know how to do that, then I think you should learn that before heading into a sinking bench press, even though you might end up being stronger with a sinking pause bench press. But just know, I think about 90%, maybe even more, are better with a soft touch. Now the biggest factor for learning how to do a good soft touch bench press is to think about how much percent of the weight on the bar is in your hands compared to on the chest while you're in the pause in the bench press. Now look at this bench press here and try and guess how much percent of the weight is in my hands compared to on my chest. Is it 50-50, 70-30? What kind of range do you think this is? Now, it's obviously pretty hard to tell exactly how much it is. The only way we could know if we literally put a scale on the chest to see what the weight would be there. But it doesn't really matter since it's more so about the subjective feeling of the weight, since that's going to be the most consistent thing and we can't really put a scale on our chest every single time we're benching. But the number I try and have in mind is about 90 to 95% of the weight in my hands while doing the pause. Here's an example of a really bad soft touch bench where we lose all the tightness in the pause itself, we get really bad leg drive, and the pause itself, I think around 50% of the weight is in my hands compared to those 90 to 95%. But here comes the tricky part. In this case, I probably wouldn't tell myself to have less percent of the weight on the chest in the pause, because I need to learn something fundamental about leg drive before that. Because here is an example of what happened when I finally learned to have 90 to 95% of the weight in my hands in the pause, but it was still a bad bench press. It was still a bad pause, even though the percent of the weight on the bar was actually like those 90 to 95% that I want in my hands. The thing is, all of these things go together, and I will make separate videos about all these different things because it's really complicated, and the pause and the amount of weight in my hands goes together with the leg drive, that goes together with the arch, that goes together with all of these different things. So it's a bit more complicated than just have this amount of percent of the weight in your hands. But this video right here is actually a really good example of me knowing how to leg drive. I know how to generate force with my lower body to help me push the weight up, but I don't know how to transition that into a good pause in the bench press. So what you see me doing here is I'm trying to push the floor away from me and push down and away with my feet, so I elevate my chest. It's fairly obvious to see right here. Now the issue is that elevated chest positioning we're getting from the leg drive, we could have that on the way down. We want that on the way down, so we can get that chest up to the bar as high as possible and really meet the bar with the chest. If we can achieve that instead of only getting that better positioning when we're pressing, we will get into a better positioning throughout the entire lift instead of just on the way up, which in the end result will give us a way better bench press. So what you can see here on a more recent video of me benching is that the chest doesn't really come up on the way up and doesn't really come down at any time. The chest stays up as high as possible throughout the entire lift because of the leg drive. But if you achieve that combination, keeping the chest up as high as possible with your leg drive throughout the entire lift, and you're having 90 to 95% of the weight in your hands in the pause itself, keeping that chest really high in the pause, then you are pretty much golden. Extremely good variation to learn how to keep the amount of weight in your hands that we want to is the spoto press, where we're going to pause the bench press slightly above the chest. So 2 centimeters above the chest, typically a little bit longer pause than what you see right here, but this is a really good variation to learn that part of the bench press. And last thing here for this video is my favorite variation for increasing how good your leg drive is definitely the tempo bench press. And with that, you might also learn that going a little bit slower on the way down might actually be beneficial on a normal bench press, just to increase that tightness and really get that leg drive up as good as possible.